There is a quiet truth that only reveals itself with age. No man can command the world until he first learns to command himself. Miyamoto Musashi understood that long before most. Born into a violent age, he grew not only as a duelist, but as a thinker. He knew the sword was only as sharp as the mind that guided it, and that the true battleground was not out there in the world, but in here, inside the self. Let me tell you something I've learned. Mastering your emotions is not about silencing them. It's about understanding their nature, observing their rise and fall, and choosing to act rather than react. Let's begin with what Musashi called the duelist's mindset. Chapter 1. The duelist's mindset. Musashi once said, "When you are even with an opponent, it is essential to keep thinking of stabbing him in the face with the tip of your sword. As soon as an opponent tries to get out of the way, you have already won." Now, to the untrained ear, that sounds brutal, but beneath that bluntness lies profound strategy. He isn't talking about violence for its own sake. He's speaking of focus, of a clarity so intense that it creates pressure in the mind of your opponent. It's not the stabbing that matters, it's the intention. See, most people enter conflict scattered, they're unsure, emotional, full of noise. But the man who holds firm, who fixes his mind like an arrow, he wins before the fight begins. What Musashi is teaching here is not just martial, it's mental. He's saying hold one intention, be unwavering, let your presence alone unnerve what's uncertain in others. This applies in business, in family, in love. Anywhere two people stand on opposite sides of desire. Chapter 2. The nature of emotion. Now, let's slow down. Emotions, they're not enemies. They're signals, flashes in the dark telling you something's alive inside you. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, they rise up, unbidden. You don't choose them. They arrive like weather, stirred by memory, by confrontation, by hope or loss. And here's the trouble. Most folks do one of two things with emotion. They cling to it, let it drive their hands, their mouth, their choices, or they shove it down, pretend it doesn't exist like a leak under the floorboards. Neither path leads to strength. One makes you a slave to your feelings. The other makes you numb and brittle, easy to crack under pressure. Both are forms of self-abandonment. Musashi saw this. He understood that emotion, left unchecked or unacknowledged, becomes the invisible hand that guides your sword, often into your own foot. Chapter 3. The false paradox. We've been taught that it's either fight or flight, react or suppress. But Musashi, the old fox that he was, knew better. He saw a third road, and it's the one few have the patience or courage to walk. He didn't tell you to feel nothing. He told you to feel fully, but not be ruled by it. That's a deeper kind of control. Real power comes when you can watch your anger rise like smoke from the fire, and instead of waving your sword, you tend the flame. When you feel fear thrum in your chest, but you walk forward anyway, not to conquer others, but to meet yourself. Emotional mastery doesn't mean deadness, it means presence. It means you've met all your inner storms and still chosen clarity. Musashi wasn't a cold man, he was a clear one. Chapter 4. The Warrior's Path. Now let me remind you who we're dealing with. Musashi wasn't some mystic hiding in a cave. He was born in 1584, during a time when death came often and without warning. At 13, he fought his first duel and killed a man. That's not something you forget. But he didn't become great just because he killed. He became great because he understood. Over 60 duels and not one loss. And he did it not through brute strength, but through discipline, focus, and the ability to read not just the body, but the soul of a man. He walked alone, not because he was lonely, but because the path he chose was narrow, demanding, and sacred. That's the warrior's path, not of dominance, but of depth. And if you're listening to this now, maybe you're ready to walk it too. Chapter 5. The Book of Five Rings. Now, this old book, the Book of Five Rings, wasn't meant for poets or philosophers. It was written for fighters, for those who knew what it meant to risk everything in a single breath. But don't be fooled by its simplicity. Beneath its five elements, ground, water, fire, wind, void, lie principles that stretch far beyond the battlefield. Musashi speaks of basics, flexibility, aggression, observation, and instinct. But at its heart, it's a book about adaptation, about knowing when to shift and when to stay rooted. That's the secret of survival, and it's the secret of growth. In today's world, you won't face swordsmen at dawn, but you'll face failure, temptation, loss, betrayal. And in every one of those battles, Musashi's wisdom still applies. Chapter 6. Acceptance and the Way, Do. Here's where it all comes home. Musashi tells us that the ultimate virtue is acceptance, to let go of desire, to stop grasping at what should be, and instead see clearly what is. He says, walk the Do, the way. Not the goal, not the finish line, the path itself. This ain't about being passive, it's about being real. It's about aligning with life even when it doesn't obey your plans. It's about choosing to move like water around the stone rather than trying to shatter it. And that takes strength most folks never cultivate. So what have we learned? We've learned that emotional mastery is not detachment, it's engagement without chaos. It's presence without obsession. It's being so rooted in your own path that nothing can drag you off it. Musashi's life wasn't easy, but it was his, and he walked it with eyes wide open. So now I ask you, will you react to your emotions, or will you learn to move through them like a blade through air? Because this is only the beginning.
In the heart of every storm, the warrior seeks not to calm the world, but to still himself. This is the teaching of Fudō, the way of immovability. Miyamoto Musashi, the great swordsman of Japan, knew this better than any man alive in his time. He did not merely fight with a blade, he forged his spirit into unshakable stone. In the Book of Five Rings, Musashi wrote, "Think never to veer from the way. Train unremittingly in the way. Acquaint yourself with all arts. Know the ways of all vocations. Discern the truth in all things. See the intrinsic worth in all things. Perceive and know what cannot be seen with the eyes. Pay attention even to trifles. Do not engage in superfluous activities." These words are not mere instructions. They are a call to a higher state of being, a discipline of the mind, forged in the heat of hardship. Fudō is not about freezing oneself into inaction. It is not rigidity. It is rooted stillness, like the mountain that remains firm no matter how fierce the wind howls. Chapter 7. The Path of Immovability, Fudō. Fudō teaches us that control over the mind is the ultimate mastery. All strength flows from a stable foundation. Without it, even great skill crumbles under pressure. Musashi lived this truth in every duel. He did not win 60 duels by chance. He won them because his mind could not be moved. His opponents tried to bait him, enrage him, distract him. None succeeded. That is Fudō, the impenetrable center. In a world today where distraction is constant and anxiety reigns supreme, the wisdom of Fudō becomes sacred. It reminds us that we cannot control others, but we can govern ourselves. And in that governance lies freedom. Chapter 8. The Eagle and the Wind. If emotions are the wind, Musashi was the eagle, soaring above the storm, not beneath it. The eagle does not curse the wind, it rides it. It uses what others fear. Musashi did not seek comfort, he sought clarity. He did not chase ease, he chased strength. His life was not paved in gold, it was carved in fire. Yet it was in that fire that he learned to bend not to circumstance, but to rise above it. This is a choice. We can be the feather, blown around by the winds of emotion, or we can become the eagle, anchored, precise, powerful. Emotions may stir, but they do not dictate. They whisper, but they do not command. Chapter 9. Modern Stress versus Musashi's World. We must be honest, we do not live in Musashi's world. There are no sword duels at dawn, no rival clans waiting to assassinate us. And yet modern man is rattled by far less. A sharp email, a partner's cold glance, a missed promotion. These small cuts bleed us dry because our minds are not forged in discipline. Musashi teaches us that hardship is not the enemy. It is the fire that tempers steel. The modern man suffers more from softness than from challenge. Anxiety festers where discipline is lacking. Fear grows where the center is absent. We are stressed not by life itself, but by our lack of foundation within it. Chapter 10. Musashi's Strategy. Musashi's personal code, the Dokkōdō, speaks of a life without attachment, without preference, without excess. His strategy begins with a simple truth. Peace of mind equals reality minus expectations. To remove expectations is to remove the seed of frustration. The greater the gap between what we hoped and what is, the greater our pain. Musashi cut this root at the source. He expected nothing, and therefore he feared nothing. Mental stability to him was not an achievement. It was a journey, a discipline, a lifelong path. You do not reach it, you walk it. And each day you choose to step forward with purpose or be dragged by emotion. Chapter 11. Mushin no Shin. Mind without mind. Mushin is not the absence of mind, it is the absence of clutter. It is a still lake, so clear that the truth reflects effortlessly. In Mushin, you do not suppress emotion, you observe it, you greet it like an old friend. When anger rises, you say, "Ah, there you are." When fear trembles, you nod, "I see you." And then you let them pass. You act not from impulse, but from principle. When your mind is clear, you are free from your ego. And when you are free from ego, you are free to act fully. It is this state that allows the warrior to move with grace under pressure. It is not that he feels nothing, it is that nothing rules him. Chapter 12. Responding versus reacting. This is the lesson of Mushin and Fudō combined, to respond, not react. Reacting is yelling when it rains. Responding is reaching for an umbrella. Most men live in reaction, trapped in the reflexes of their past wounds. Musashi teaches us to rise above, to choose our next step, not be dragged into it. His calm under pressure was not some mystical gift. It was earned, forged, practiced daily. We must do the same. Meditation, reflection, discipline. These are not luxuries, they are tools of war. Inner war. Musashi understood you do not control life, but you must control how you meet it.
There comes a point in a warrior's life when the sword must be sheathed, not out of weakness, but because one's battle is no longer external. The greatest duel a man ever fights is not with an enemy across from him, but with the chaos within. Musashi knew this. He understood that mastering emotions is not about denying them or surrendering to them, but walking straight through them like a fire, still, calm, watching. Chapter 13. The Duel with Sasaki Kojiro. The legendary duel with Sasaki Kojiro was not just a clash of blades, it was the ultimate expression of psychological control. The world had waited to see which of these two titans would emerge victorious. Kojiro was the favorite, young, fast, famous. But Musashi? He was wise. He showed up 3 hours late. Why? Because he was not there to entertain anyone's expectations. He was there to win. He arrived not with a polished katana, but with a carved wooden oar. An insult? No. A symbol. Kojiro reacted. He grew angry, impatient, emotional. And Musashi? Calm as ever. Sun at his back, shadow in his eyes. He said only one thing before the final moment. You have already lost. Kojiro's mistake was not technical. It was emotional. He let his ego swing the sword, and that was all Musashi needed. In the end, Musashi won not because he was stronger, but because he was more composed. The sun did not blind Kojiro. His rage did. As Epictetus said, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Kojiro lost that day long before Musashi's oar struck his skull. Chapter 14. The Witness Mindset. Musashi did not see emotions as enemies. He saw them as signals. To witness an emotion is to give it no power, yet give it space. Most people live their lives as slaves to reaction, saying things they regret, doing things they cannot take back, then blaming emotion like it was some storm they could not control. But Musashi taught, control begins with awareness. When you feel something rise, anger, fear, sadness, step back, observe, name it. Ah, there is frustration. I see you. This is the witness mindset. From this place, you do not react, you respond. You choose. And in that choice, you reclaim your dignity. Musashi told us to think lightly of ourselves and deeply of the world. In other words, stop over-identifying with your momentary feelings and start seeing the whole landscape.
Chapter 15. Musashi's Legacy in Modern Times. The warrior's code never disappeared. It simply evolved. Its spirit now lives in modern arenas, worn not by armored samurai, but by men of discipline, precision, and mental resilience. We saw it in Kobe Bryant, who studied Musashi religiously. His discipline, his calm under pressure, his obsession with preparation. These were not simply traits. They were sharpened like blades. Kobe often said, "Trust the work you've done." He knew that under pressure, you do not rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation. Emotions do not win games, execution does. And in the world of American football, few embodied Fudō, the path of immovability, like Tom Brady. Brady was not the fastest, he was not the strongest, but his mind was a fortress. For over 2 decades, he remained composed under the brightest lights in the loudest stadiums with millions watching. When the pressure mounted, Brady didn't flinch. He calculated. He didn't rush. He adjusted. Whether down by 2 scores or in the final seconds of the Super Bowl, his demeanor remained still, cold, focused. While others celebrated early or panicked late, Brady stood like a mountain amid the chaos. Musashi would have respected this, for he taught that mental stability under pressure is the ultimate advantage. That the battlefield may change, but the principle remains the same. You do not need a sword to live by the way of the warrior. In boardrooms, courtrooms, classrooms, or in the 4th quarter with seconds on the clock, the truth holds. He who governs himself governs the outcome.
Chapter 16. Owning Your Emotions. Dr. Ramani, a modern psychologist, reminds us that owning emotion begins with accepting it.
Denial is weakness. Suppression is delay. As Freud once wrote, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. Musashi would agree. He believed in integration, not indulgence. When we claim our emotions as our own, we stop blaming others. We stop saying, he made me mad or she made me jealous. No, they revealed what was already inside us, and that revelation is a gift. Ownership means expression with grace, knowing the time and the place, reading the room, breathing before we act, choosing discipline over reaction, and above all, never confusing emotion with identity. You are not your anger. You are not your sadness. You are the observer behind the curtain. Chapter 17. Musashi's Final Years. In his final decade, Musashi did not chase fame or fortune. He retreated into silence. He painted. He wrote. He meditated. He said that around age 50, he finally understood the way, not just in combat, but in all things. He began to see strategy in every movement, every brushstroke, every breath. This is the highest form of mastery, not in dominating others, but in understanding the self so deeply that life itself becomes an extension of your awareness. When illness came, stomach pain, relentless, he did not complain. He accepted. He withdrew into a cave known as Regendao and spent his last 2 years alone, preparing for death as a samurai should, still, ready, free. Chapter 18. The Mastery of Letting Go. In the end, Musashi taught us the paradox of true mastery. To master the world, you must let go of needing to master it. Attachment is weight, expectation is a leash, fear is a fog. But when you let go, when you loosen your grip, you gain space, and in that space, clarity is born. Mushin gives us the emptiness needed to act without fear. Fudō gives us the stillness to stay on the path, and together, they allow us to see emotions are not enemies, but energy. If channeled, they give life depth. If reacted to, they give life chaos. Remember, there is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. Everything is within. Everything exists. Seek nothing outside of yourself. That is the way of the warrior. That is the way of the soul. That is the way.
If this video resonated with you, I invite you to walk further along this path. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next step in this journey toward clarity, discipline, and inner strength. And if you know someone who could use a reminder to stay calm in the storm, share this with them. Because the way of Musashi isn't just for warriors, it's for anyone learning to master their mind in a world that keeps trying to shake it. Stay centered, stay steady, and keep walking the way.